Hi, welcome to Tales of Dread. I hope you're having a great day so far. But get ready, because the 3 exciting stories are about to make it even better. I have something ready for you. Next, we go from South Dakota to Hawaii, which is the most western state in the US, and then to Maine, which is the most eastern state. And since you're coming all this way with me, welcome aboard. If you're enjoying our flight, please like, subscribe, and even share. Thanks. Let's start the stories now. Around dusk, the first sign of trouble showed up for my father and I during our camping trip. The day had been hot and sticky. So we waited until the sun was starting to go down before we started our fire and made dinner. Dad put the cast iron over the fire to get it ready to cook the walleye we had caught and filleted earlier, but it wasn't long before the camp smelled like rotting flesh. When we first smelled the fish, we thought it might have gone bad, but when we took a closer look, it was clear that the smell wasn't coming from it. We hadn't smelled it all day, not even when it was the hottest, when you'd think the smell of a rotting body would be the worst. Still, we decided to look around to see if there was a dead or dying animal nearby. It would be our bad luck to have set up camp next to a dead animal that smells bad. We walked up and down the nearby trails, sniffing and looking, but we didn't find anything. We couldn't find any rotting bodies, which was even stranger. The rotting smell seemed to get stronger. No matter where we went, it seemed like the whole forest was being eaten up or falling apart around us. What we did find, which was kind of strange, were deep hoof prints that looked like they were made by a very big deer. My dad was especially amazed by this because he has worked with game fish and parks for most of his life, and he had never seen deer prints that big before. Since we couldn't figure out where the smell was coming from, we decided to head back to camp. So by then, it was getting dark, and the smell just kept getting worse, even though there was no obvious source. When we got back to the campsite, we took the fish out of the cooler and cooked it, but neither of us had much of an appetite at that point. We sat around the fire, picking at our food and trying not to talk about how bad it smelled. I started to hear something moving in the bush far away. "Is that what you hear?" I asked my dad if whatever it was big enough to be moving through the trees and breaking what sounded like big branches. My dad shrugged. He tried to reassure me by saying, "There's nothing too scary around here," but I could tell from his face and voice that he was a little scared himself. I almost asked him if he wanted to get up early and leave. I really wanted him to just say yes, but we were both putting on a good show and acting like everything was fine. I was afraid to ask him directly, though, because I didn't want to look like a wimp on the trip if I was wrong about him. "What's going on?" Then my dad said, "I almost fell out of my camp chair." He was looking back into the woods over my shoulder, and when I turned around, I saw what he was looking at. At first, it looked like dead tree branches were moving side to side about 7 feet above the ground. At this point, it was getting dark, and the moonlight was just right for us to see the pointed sticks. One might have thought it was the wind blowing through a dead tree, except there wasn't much of a breeze that night and the movement wasn't in any kind of rhythm. It looked like it was moving on its own, not with anything else. Who could it be? Dad yelled. I don't know what he thought someone was doing to make a tree move in that way, but he did. But when the next thing happened, we both ran up the trail at the same time to get to the jeep. The figure went up another foot and then went under the points of the sticks. A pair of yellow eyes shone through the darkness. We didn't know what we were looking at until the eyes came into view. It looked like a big deer's head with antlers, but it was at least 8 feet off the ground. About 8 or 9 at this point. We left everything behind and ran back to the Jeep as fast and hard as we could. Once we were inside, we didn't even bring our gear with us. Instead, we decided to spend the night in hot springs and get a hotel. We thought we'd go back for the gear in the morning when it was light out. We stayed up all night at the hotel talking about what we'd seen and hoping it wasn't real. As a game fish and parks guy, my dad's first thought was that it was just an old buck with wasting disease, which is a common neurological disease in the area and can make deer look like zombies. In the end, this is what we decided we'd seen. We thought we'd both just been scared in the middle of the night, and had a bad stomachache the next day because we hadn't eaten. When we got back to the campsite, we threw that idea out the window. Whatever we had seen had found our campsite, destroyed our tents, put out our fire, and thrown everything we had all over the forest floor. There were at least 10 inches of front-to-back hoof prints all over the campsite, and that was just one set. Keep in mind that whatever was there before was only walking on 2 feet. I don't think we'll be going back to the hills for a while. I heard about your channel from my brother. He likes to listen. I'm new to this kind of thing, to be honest. But now that we've talked about some things, I'm more interested. I saw the creature that everyone says doesn't exist, and it scared me. So I'm more interested in what other people have to say and what they've seen. My experience happened last September on my honeymoon in Kauai, Hawaii. If you don't know, Hawaii is made up of 6 islands. You can visit. Most people go to Oahu or Maui for the nightlife in the big resorts, but my husband and I prefer to be in nature. So we went to Kauai, which is called the Garden Isle. Hiking the cultural trail is one of the best things to do in Hawaii. It's a tough trail. It goes all the way along these dangerous, steep cliffs. The whole trail is 11 miles one way, and if you're up for that long of a hike, you can camp at the end of the beach, which is an interesting fact. In the 1970s, there was a group of hippies who stayed out there and lived in the Colonial Valley at the end of the trail. I can't say that I blame them, but in the end, the government came and pretty much kicked them out. Anyway, my husband and I like to hike, but we only wanted to do an 8-mile round trip. We decided to go in for 2 miles on the main trail, then stop at Hanakopii Beach, then head 2 miles inland to swim at Hanakopii Falls, and then hike back out. We only had a week in Hawaii, so it was just a day trip. The trail is pretty, but it would be hard for a couple in their 40s to walk it. Even though the views are great, we were glad to get to the beach and be able to stop and rest. It's a beautiful beach, but after about 15 minutes I was ready to start exploring. My husband just wanted to chill out on the beach. So I went down to the beach for a little while to check out some of the caves. On that beach, there is a strong riptide. Locals have put up a sign that says how many tourists have drowned, but I knew I had plenty of time because it was low tide. I walked about a quarter mile down the beach before I got to the first cave. It was cool to look at, but not very deep. Then I remembered that I'd left my camera on the beach with our other stuff. So, that was kind of bad. I thought about going back for it, but decided that once we got to the falls, there would be plenty of things to take pictures of, especially when I came out of the cave and was about to walk down the beach to the next one when I saw a path. It looked like an animal path went up the side of the cliff next to the first cave. It seemed to end at the second cave, which was about 30 feet above the beach. One of the best things about Hawaii is that they don't have any snakes on the land. They do have a sea snake that can kill you. So, even though you're bushwhacking in a jungle, you don't have to worry about getting bitten by a snake. It didn't take me long to get to the opening of the upper cave, where the sun was shining in at an angle, which was awesome. It was bright enough that I didn't have to take my flashlight off my belt yet. To get in, I had to lower my head. But then the cave's ceiling went up a little, and I could almost stand up straight. There are no signs that people have been there, like graffiti or trash, which is a good thing. I went a little farther in and saw that it was split into 2 rooms. At this point, I hesitated because I thought my husband would freak out if he couldn't see me on the beach. But, hey, it was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, so I took my flashlight off and went to look around the corner. The left chamber didn't go anywhere for a while, and it smelled kind of bad. I went back and tried the right-hand chamber. When I shined my flashlight over the walls, I saw lots of sparkly things in them. I think they were minerals. I was so interested in it that I ran the beam up and down over it. I took another step forward, and then I heard a hiss. My heart was pounding so hard in my chest that I stopped in my tracks. I pointed the light down and thought, oh my god, they were wrong about the snakes, but there was nothing on the cave floor. When I heard another hiss and wildly bounced the light up and around, I saw it. The eyes first flashed, and the pupils were black slits. Then the thing hissed again, moved forward, and came fully into the light. I shouldn't tell you. It was as tall as I was and looked like a cross between a dragon and a lizard. I could see rows of teeth, like an alligator, and the scales on its body were green. I've never seen anything more scary. It was standing on 2 legs, with the tips of its front legs sticking out and long, black claws that scared me out of my mind. I tried to go backwards, but I ran into a rock wall. My blood was as cold as ice, and the thing looked like it could eat me. I was able to turn around and get out, but a rock at the entrance hurt my toe as I climbed over it. I didn't care. I didn't even notice I was running down the cliff path at that point, and I almost fell down the steep slope. But I got back on my feet just in time. I finally stopped when I got to the beach and looked back up. It wasn't going after me. I wonder if it ever even left the cave during the day. Perhaps not. So, since my husband is very practical, I was afraid to tell him about what happened. I just said that I saw something strange and didn't know what it was, but that we weren't going into any caves up there, and then I realized that my toe hurt a lot. I think I might have broken the bone, so we didn't go to the waterfall after all. Instead, we spent the rest of our honeymoon at the beach instead of hiking. I did want to say something quickly. You know, Channel isn't that far away, and there's that old song called Puff, the Magic Dragon, even though it's sung in a funny way. It was really about Honolulu, Hawaii, which makes me think there might have been a dragon legend there a long time ago. If there was, it might have been because people in the area saw something that looked like a cross between a lizard and a person. What do you think, guys? Well, I sure have a tale to tell you. I'm still thinking about it, and my therapist says that talking about it is better than keeping it all inside. So I'll start by telling you a little about myself. I'm a junior at the University of Maine, where I study environmental science and engineering. My name is Samantha. I hike a lot and love being outside in any way, from running and skiing to fishing, camping, boating, and even watching birds. For me, it's just a quiet thing to do. Again, my therapist says it's good for me because it gives me some quiet time away from my anxiety. I wouldn't say I'm very good at watching birds, but I've gotten better because I took a class on ornithology this past semester. I first learned a few important things about birding. You need a good pair of binoculars at all times. Second, a field guide can be your best friend, but your ears can also be your best tool. Birds have many different sounds they use to tell each other what they want. They might do this to find a mate, let others know they've found food, warn others, give directions, or even warn of danger. Some birds have a lot of different calls, songs, and sounds. These sounds usually come with a variety of different pitches and ways of making sounds. I've learned the sounds of the most common birds in the Northeast, and I'm pretty good at putting them with the right birds. I've also been hiking enough to be able to tell if a bird is male or female, a youngster, an adult, or even an old person by the way it looks. I am determined to learn everything there is to learn. I've been going out on the weekends almost every morning to see what I can find. Early morning is usually the best time to watch birds because it's not too hot for them and some of their predators aren't up yet, or have just gone to bed. They have a saying, right? Whoever gets up early gets the worm. I've been hiking at Moose Point State Park for about a mile and have just seen a razorbill, some dark-eyed juncos, a pair of winter wrens, and a couple of winter wrens. The day after a big storm, the birds were busy in the morning. I started hiking up a hill to get a better view and maybe see some birds flying by from above. I found a winding path up the mountain that led to a great view from above. It was on some dusty rocks in a clearing. I took a break by sitting down, and it wasn't long before I felt a shadow pass over me. As fast as I could, I looked up, but I couldn't see anything in the sky. But then I heard rustling about 100 yards away in the trees. I took out my binoculars to try to see more clearly. I could only catch a glimpse of a black wing flying in and out of a huge pine tree. The whole tree trunk was swaying back and forth, and needles and branches were flying out in all directions. Suddenly, this creature popped out of the tree. I didn't think it could have been a vulture, a hawk, or an eagle. I thought it might have been an osprey, but its wings were too big and its face didn't look anything like a bird's. The most surprising thing about it was that it didn't really have a face at all. Only these bright red eyes that seemed to be looking down. It almost had the body of a person, but it was covered in a thin layer of black fuzz and had huge wings that spread out almost 2 yards wide. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It started to dart down below the trees, so I stood up with my binoculars and watched it for a while. There was silence in the whole forest, but then I heard a deer. It was definitely a deer that was hurting and bleating. Another tree's leaves shook, and then this creature came flying by with a piece of dough stuck between its hands. It was a little off balance because it was carrying the weight, but it flapped its huge, smooth wings like a smart bird. Still, I watched the animal as long as I could with my binoculars. Eventually, I lost sight of it for good. I sat there for a while in shock, and then I walked down the hill to leave that forest. As I got closer to where the deer had been caught, I saw fallen trees, broken branches, and leaves all over the place. It was clear that there had been a fight, and I got out of there as fast as I could. I spent the rest of the day looking up what I had seen, but it doesn't seem likely that it happened this far north. I really think I saw what people call a mothman. Neither a bird nor a bat looked like it. I'll keep an eye out for more signs of it, but I probably won't go back into those woods by myself because I can't stop thinking that if it could pick up an adult deer, why couldn't it also pick me up? Tell me in the comments what you think of these stories. Several times per day.